Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Exploring Energy series presented by Montana Renewable Energy Association. My name is McKenna Sellers. I'm the Executive Director for Montana Renewable Energy Association, and I'm based out of Helena, Montana. The Exploring Energy series is a monthly lunchtime presentation where we cover energy issues impacting Montana and beyond. We do these on the first Wednesday of the month at noon Mountain Time to explore renewable energy technology, the latest trends in energy development, and connect with experts working on the future of our energy system. If you're interested in learning more about our library and our archive of past presentations, you can find those at montanarenewables.org/exploring energy. And if you want to go straight to the source, you could also visit our YouTube page, which I've included in the chat here. So a few housekeeping items. Please keep yourself muted during the presentation. We'll have questions at the end. We've prepared a presentation that's about 45 minutes long for this month. And you can submit questions directly at any time using the chat function, the chat box that you can see on your menu screen. If for whatever reason we do not get to your question by the time we finish this call, you can email directly info@montanarenewables.org, and we'll be sure to get you a follow-up and make sure that your questions are answered. A little bit about MREA, if you're not familiar with us, we are a member-based organization working on the clean energy transition for Montana through education, advocacy, and industry engagement. Our membership is incredibly diverse. We have a range of homeowners all the way to industry professionals on the distributed energy to utility scale development. So if you're interested in the work that MREA is doing, I invite you to consider becoming a member today. And today we're joined by longtime MREA member and renewable energy expert, Dan Brandberg. He'll be giving us the scoop on learning before you buy, EV facts and fiction. So if you can't get enough of the EV topic, back in March, we invited Neil Ullman with the DEQ Energy Office to give us the landscape for Montana EVs. And so he covered a lot of trends ranging from the homeowner side of electric vehicles to the larger scale and heavy duty vehicles. So if you want to get the lay of the land, I invite you to take a look at that March presentation. But we're going a little deeper with Dan on questions and topics that a prospective EV future buyer might want to consider as you make your next vehicle purchase. So we're excited to have Dan here on the call. Couple other housekeeping items. The Montana Clean Energy Fair will be hosted again in Billings, August 24th, 2024. And our sponsorship and exhibitor signups are open now. So I'll put the link in the chat if you or your company is interested in sponsoring or being involved in the Montana Clean Energy Fair this year. We welcome you to take part in that. And just two more final announcements, all related to work that MREA is currently doing. MREA was a petitioner in a recent rulemaking petition put before the Montana Public Service Commission, requesting that the PSC evaluate climate impacts when making regulatory decisions. That comment deadline has been extended to July 1st. So that's hot off the press. This was a decision that was just made yesterday. Wanted to make sure that our members and supporters know about that extended deadline. Okay, so at this point, I will now introduce Dan Brandberg. So Dan has been in the solar photovoltaic industry for over 30 years. He's worked with numerous battery technologies as they've developed, much of these demanded by the growing EV industry. Technical solutions to environmental issues, including EV mass adoption, is his deep passion. He's recently retired from full-time solar projects and is an EV enthusiast who is transitioning his farm with his wife, Becky, from dependence on fossil fuels to an all-electric solar-powered operation. Dan has a Bachelor's of Science in Resource Management from the University of Montana and comes from the Bitterroot Valley from a family of conservationists. Dan is also a NABCEP solar photovoltaic certified installer and one of the founding members of MREA. So we're very glad to have Dan back as a guest on the Exploring Energy series. He's a return featured speaker. So with that, I'll welcome Dan, have him introduce his topic here, and we'll get started. Dan, you have the floor.
Finding the slideshow
Hmm.
and sound and check.
Okay, here we go. I think we're up. Can you see that, McKenna?
Thumbs up, looks great.
All right, we're up and running. Well, hi, thank you. It's nice to be invited to speak. I wanted to talk about electric vehicles, but from a little different perspective, since Neil did such a good job just a couple months ago about other aspects of electrics, and kind of orient it to what we're doing on our farm, and to how we've modified and transitioned to make electric vehicles work in our long-term goal of taking the place to as much electric as possible and getting rid of our fossil fuel use. So let's see here. What I'd like to go over, roughly speaking, is just a few things here, just electrifying everything, um, charging, range, uh, dispelling a lot of myths that are still out there. Of course, charging with solar and recycling, and any other questions that come up. And so hopefully do some new stuff and kind of an update from I teach classes at Learning Center in Missoula and some adult ed classes are a couple hours. So I'll try to condense this down to 40 minutes or so, but plenty of time for questions. So I always start with this adopter um, graph because I think we're beyond that. We're beyond an early adopter. So when I say beyond that, I think we're early majority. It's fun to see the change in the last few years with electric vehicles, what's available, where we're at. The Tesla Model Y became the world's best-selling vehicle in 2023. So we're getting there. And it's a lot of fun to see things going so fast and to have the economics behind it. Just speaking with McKenna about how solar and electric vehicles now with the economics make sense. And so we're finally kind of on the right side of the power curve when it comes to we've got the markets supporting us instead of just working against that with maybe just a passion to go renewable. So it's fun. It's a good time to be alive. So this is our place. We're in the Bitterroot Valley in Hamilton. It's the old 30 years ago, we bought the Marcus Daly fish hatchery farm, and a large building there in the center is our fish hatchery. We also run cattle with a regenerative grazing system, and we use about 3 times as much power as the average U.S. home. So we've got to make quite a bit power here. We did recently expand from a 200 amp service for the farm to a 400 amp, replacing the transformer that feeds our operation. So that was, I believe it was about a $9,000 cost to bring that up to where the second electric vehicle kind of kicked us over the top. We run heat pumps, hot water, of course, and just heating. We do have the benefit of having spring water that comes into our hatchery. So I steal a little bit of that for our heat pump and take 7 gallons a minute through the heat pump and 5 degrees temperature, and then put of course, discharge into a cistern. So as we all know, non-consumptive use of water, which is a pretty fun way to look at 7 gallons a minute heating a 3,000 square foot home. So fun stuff, but I have to be careful because I'm such into all the passions of the renewables that I can tangent. So McKenna can maybe keep me in line here. We'll see. So the top concerns of EVs remain. I think travel distance range is a question, but we can talk a little more about that. Just how much range do we really need? Vehicle prices are going the right direction. They're coming down. I know the Ford Lightning that I have has come down $15,000 in cost since I bought it. So early adopter penalty there. But what else is new for early adopting? And charger availability is really increasing and making over the on the road trips that much easier. So let's get back to some of the farm stuff here. So we do raise cattle. We using the regenerative agriculture approach where we rotate our cattle on grass. They're all grass fed. There's no feedlot involved, but that involves moving them either daily or after several days, which also demands that you have water at each one of these cells, a 1 acre cell with that many cattle. You can see they mow it pretty well down 1 acre in 24 hours. So we're constantly moving, but we've got to have a water system that follows them as well. So one of the things we've added in the last year is frost-free water without adding heating to the equation. There's so many things that we can do that, oh, well, just put in a little pump house and put a 100-watt light bulb in there of the old style light bulbs as a heater. Well, run that 24 hours a day through the least solar production time of the year. So the negawatt is always something that I always bring up is don't just go with a little more electricity here and there. Figure out how to do it. And for in our watering system, we actually made a spring box, and we we're down below the ground, well insulated, to where it doesn't freeze. Put a thermometer on it this winter and watched it. As low as we got was 46 degrees by just going subterranean above the spring to water the cattle. So those are the kind of approaches that we're always looking at. And we take a little bit more work, but it works long term. I think the other thing that we're battling is I counted up how many internal combustion small engines we have around the farm. I came up with 19, which is kind of eye-opening to me how many little engines we depend on wheel lines, splitter, you name it. And amazing how much time I spend driving an electric vehicle down to the auto parts shop to get oil and filters and such to keep all these ICE engines going, which I've vowed to no longer bring any more internal combustion engines on the property. Everything I want to bring on now is electric, and we're getting there. And the EVs are a huge use of power, so it's the direction to go. But then you also have to look at the economics of replacing every one of these motors. Say like on a wheel line, you run that motor for 2 minutes a day. What's the amount of gasoline we use in those is pretty minimal, yet they're noisy and they take maintenance and such. So changing them out with time. So one of we run two vehicles here, actually three. We run a Tesla Model Y. We've had that for, I think we have 45,000 miles on it. And we have a Ford Lightning we picked up 2 years ago. And then I also run I think we have a slide coming up side by side with the new lithium battery in it. Anyhow, let's talk about the Ford bidirectional system. This was kind of a fun one. The battery in that truck is substantial, 131 kilowatt hours. So it's a no-brainer to use that battery for something besides just going down the road. And Ford offers with pretty much a leading direction there, which is fun to see Ford doing with the Sunrun system here. So basically, you plug the truck into the inverter, and it's sitting in wait for a power outage, and then it'll power the farm, our backup circuits on the farm. Let's be clear, not everything on the farm, from the truck. So it works. It works well. I was uh, when we first did it, the Sunrun didn't really have it together. Ford didn't have it together. We had three entities going on. We got Ford, Sunrun, and Delta Inverters. So it was easy for one company to point to another company and say, "Oh, there's the problem." So we spent quite a few hours on the phone getting that set up. But she's up and running. It's pretty fun to sit and watch. Here's the display in the truck showing you just how much power you're using, um, and how much time you have left. Their marketing came on and said 3 days running a house, and that was pretty accurate. And that would be a house without a backup panel, with a full panel. So the one disadvantage that we found here is that in an extended outage, and we come from the world of starting with remote homes and working with the clientele that were really concerned about stability of the grid and the grid going away for a longer period of time. I would love to see the integration of letting the solar charge the truck in an outage, but we don't have that. We don't have that ability right now. So that's the final step that I'd like to see. Yet there's not much of a market demand to do that. People aren't really thinking that direction when you look at the whole picture. So there's not a real drive for them to do that, but they do say it's coming. So and there's interesting little key move. It's not a do-it-yourself project. It's an installer project. You're working with the grid. You've got the transfer switch, dark start battery, and inverter. That's a string inverter. So takes a little bit doing. The truck itself is pretty versatile machine. I mean, she can handle some loads. Do a lot of hauling, and it's 8,000 pounds of concrete coming out of a dump trailer. We can handle that kind of stuff just fine. Of course, the range goes to about half of what it would be without a trailer. So we just have to plan and know that. It's just fuel management. Did a while as a commercial pilot and stuff, and fuel management was number one reason small aircraft come out of the sky is lack of fuel, running out of gas. So watching my range is easy for me, and that's something I'm always thinking about in the back of your mind. So I do, doing thinking about that in the back of your mind. But I have had encounters with both the Tesla early on and the Ford, bringing it down to barely making it. So that's what happened. You start using this equipment hard. Do my best. But look there, I can see the one figure, 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour. So I was hauling pretty heavy load, and came right down to nothing. I think another thing there to mention is, the vehicles, like the Rivian truck here, Ford truck, they have inverters built in. So so they have an outlet, like this Rivian has an outlet. Unfortunately, it's just 120 volt. But in this case, helped a friend wire his some backup loads in his home to where he could just put an extension cord in and power a few loads in his house through a transfer switch, so we wouldn't go out to the grid at all, but just to isolate those loads and run them from the vehicle. So the Ford has the same system. There's some even couldn't tell you which make and model right now because of the shit changing so much. And I do throw a disclaimer out. All this data is changing quickly. So I could misquote numbers here and sizes exactly. So just throw that out there. But the Ford has a 7.6 kilowatt inverter on the back end, and actually a 2.4 kilowatt inverter on the front end, not a combination of the two. So you can only tap into one inverter or the other. But this is another way of doing it. Instead of going with the big bi-directional equipment and all that installation is just a simple transfer switch. You have electrician wired in and a backup panel. Another fun option. So of course, as we bring on electric vehicles, I said we increase the size of our transformer because we were right at the limit with what we were doing. But as we add electric vehicles, you need to add to the array. Don't notice my OSHA approved scaffolding over there. This is a farm, so we get things done. It's not like working out there for SBS like my past, where we're a little more on top of things. You get to the farm environment, making things do. But point being that more solar is needed if we're going to try to stay in that. Our goal is 95% of what we're using. A lot of transition there in that one barn roof. The top modules are 300 watts a piece. Bottom modules are 480. So we're seeing things move on, and but we're needing to use all our square footage of that roof. So just what the amazing thing when you start looking hard at ICE vehicles versus electric vehicles is the efficiency, and efficiency wins. And how inefficient our ICE vehicles are, where say 16 to 25%, what we're saying here with this picture, of that calories, BTUs, energy units, whatever they be, of that fossil fuel goes into actually driving the vehicle. And we've got a lot of waste heat. No, not a issue about heating a vehicle, but boy, we're losing a lot. And that's what happens, as we all know, because MREA viewers are very educated folks, but we just got to stop burning stuff because of the inefficiency of converting burning to mode of energy, or to if we could just go straight to electric from our renewables to electric, we just have so many more advantages, and that's the way to go. Here's the graph that I think just shows everything. When we look at an ICE engine, diesel, whatever it be, gasoline, we're working at maybe 35% efficient if everything's at an optimum, versus electric motor in the 90s. So I run into this one-third, two-third variation quite a bit with stuff like heat pumps. It's amazing how many times we see the one-third, two-third shift. But we can challenge the laws of man. In my view, we can't change the laws of physics, and the physics is saying electrify. If you want to use your energy efficiently, electrify. So the electric vehicle just makes all kinds of sense. And as people wake up to the savings of operating the vehicles, it's a no-brainer. But we're seeing that happen slowly, slower than some of us want, for sure. But here's a little comparison. We took a trip over to electrify a fully charged show over Vancouver, British Columbia last year. And so I just looked at the difference of taking the Tesla over versus different vehicles, and just the cost of a 1,400-mile trip. And on the right hand is if we were at home here. Now this is dated a little bit. We're at 8 cents a kilowatt hour for 1,400 miles if we just did our home charging, which we do, 90x% of the time. $26 of electricity. If we were on Northwestern Energy, 13 cents, I believe it's up a little higher now, $41. Now, when you get into the fast chargers, which Neil talked about much in earlier in March, the Tesla system right now, I believe it's about that 34 cents per kilowatt hour at a fast charge station. Now, it varies from charger to charger, but there's so look at that difference between 8 cents at home, 34 cents at a fast charger. I just charged in the Missoula Electrify America station, 65 cents a kilowatt hour. Real interesting to see them almost twice what the Tesla system is charging. Then you go into your gas vehicles on the left side of the graph, a 45-mile vehicle, 45 miles per gallon versus 35, 25. So the economics are just hands down. I think when people really understand this, we're going to see a lot more adoption than we are today. It's just fun economics. And then, of course, regenerative braking is a huge benefit, and it's a benefit when you have a heavy load on a vehicle coming down, especially because you are charging those batteries hard with more weight. This is a little graph from the Tesla monitor of going up Lost Trail Pass. So in the yellow as we're going up the pass through the little S curves there, then finally hit the pass, start down. If you look at your range at the top of the pass, you might be at 200 miles. You get down to the bottom of the pass, you're at 205 miles. So it's fun to see that work. And of course, anytime you come into a stoplight, the whole one pedal driving thing is pretty addictive to me. And just don't have to. I kind of was taught never to don't use up those brake pads, and I sure don't when it comes to electric vehicles. Another low maintenance feature of electric vehicles is just less brake wear. Just a couple other random things here. Our selection is increasing dramatically. So we're seeing more and more vehicles and major OEMs coming to play. So our selection's getting better. Yeah, we've got a little slow turnaround right now where we're not selling as many electric vehicles in this winter, but I think that's a blip. I don't think that's anything but a short-term blip. And maybe, the most important part that we look over is how safe is it to drive your vehicle. The 5-star safety rating. Well, really, what's more important than that? My opinion again is, yeah, we're looking at economics, we're looking at health of our planet, but when you look at the safety features, just maybe that should be the number one. I think it should. This is a little graph from Tesla. Again, I'm just comparing their vehicles with the U.S. fleet. But the newer 5-star vehicles, who's a lot of the electrics, are just safer to drive. I don't want to really get into autopilot, FSD, full self-driving. That's another discussion, but we do have fun with it. Some of the myths, of course, out there, EV fires, just is not true. Amazing how many people I can start a conversation with, and yeah, but the fires, they're just more likely that lithium battery is going to catch on fire. Well, it's a rare event, much more rare than in an ICE vehicle. So we're just percentages, I think, change, but it way overdone as far as the concern, much less than the ICE vehicles. So, but they're still making the news. If electric vehicle catches on fire, it might make the evening news. Where the car fire doesn't make the news. Maintenance is 10% of the moving parts. 10% of the moving parts of electric vehicle results in a heck of a lot less maintenance. And Consumer Reports just verified that just last week with a nice study they published that cost of ownership of operating a vehicle, maintenance of a vehicle, Tesla came out as number one, as the lowest cost first 5-10 years of owning a vehicle. So now we got some data. Good old Consumer Reports, which I've had some issues with. One of them was this video that they put out about how to cheat full self-driving by putting a weight on the steering wheel there to mimic somebody having some tension on the wheel. to stay in full self-driving, because if you don't, it's going to knock you right out of your full automatic driving. So they put this out. To what end? I don't understand. How to cheat the system, how to be more dangerous. But anyhow, they've come on with this new study. I'm glad to see that that we are less cost to run and to maintain. But of course, home charging is the way to go. 90% plus. That's over what we're seeing. It makes so much more sense. It's more economical. It's easy. There's less time in plugging in your vehicle and unplugging your vehicle than there is waiting at a gas station, even loading up with gas. And me personally, I don't mind spending the time here plugging in versus out at a convenience store and doing that. So feel like I'm going to spoil the other thing. Are we good? Anyhow, how we're doing on time? Doing good. All right. So then fast chargers. As Neil covered in March, they're coming on. We're going to have some town pump chargers here soon, and we just took a trip actually, it was one trip where we went to Spokane this winter. So another little real world experience when it was really cold there. This last winter, it was 10 below, and we went to Spokane and came back, and we have new charging stations in along the way between Spokane and Missoula. We were able to use a hotel over in Spokane with a charger, level 2 destination charger, charge up through the night, and pretty cold night, and drive to St. Regis. Spent 15 minutes in St. Regis charging the car, and made it all the way home. So started with a full charge, one stop at St. Regis, and home. So pretty nice, better than it used to be, and we're going the right direction. So a lot of fun there. And of course, charge stations, like it's covered, that they're coming on, but we still have a void there in the middle of Montana. I think that's really interesting to see how we're at the bottom of the list for charge density when it comes to central northern Montana there. Fun. And then the charge stations with the NACS, the NACS charger, the Tesla derived charger that is a lot less expensive, more efficient, easier to use. It is one, and OEMs are converting to that. So we're getting through the old, I used to call the VHS versus beta or whatever when we got into video recording. So industry's evolving pretty quickly there. So then, the question that I always get to is, well, how much range do we really need? We live 50 miles from Missoula. We have grandkids in Missoula, so 110-mile run is just it's nothing to worry about. So the only time we really think about mileage is if we forgot to plug something in, or if we're going on a road trip. So how many miles? I couldn't think of a full electric because it just doesn't have range. I got to have a hybrid. Well, look at what you really do with that vehicle 90% of the time. So I would challenge, we have 300-mile range. The truck has about 250-mile range. That's really sufficient for most of the work. Now, I do have a Dodge diesel that I use, and I would have to use if I took off to, say, Billings, that, I'm going to use the diesel. And so hopefully, I could see some more range there. But for 90% of our use, we're well covered. And just some sample ranges. if you look at, in our case, we look at the Ford Lightning, we'll get about 70 miles per gallon equivalent, of course, versus we take the Tesla and we're in the 120s. So which vehicle do you want to drive to Missoula? Well, really want to drive that more efficient one, but 70 miles per gallon is a lot better than 18 with the diesel and the expense wise and everything. So, and then of course we have uh, variations with that with temperature, but with our planning and with the monitoring of the vehicles, it sure helps. It lets us plan. Oh, that's what I use my classes. Play this for folks. A good summary of a lot of the myths out there by Fully Charged Show. Great video series out of England. So just highly recommend those guys. Whoop. Um, Electrification's coming. I'm waiting for. I've got two Kubota tractors. We really waiting for a viable electric tractor to come along, and so we can say goodbye to some of that diesel use. Um, this was a small excavator over in Vancouver there last year, so it's coming. We're getting there. The only difference in this rig is the big battery to run that hydraulic pump, which runs everything, and designed for 8 hours of use. So something that see in our future. Yeah, of course, heating does take a toll on our battery mileage, our range. The first time you do a run, this is a run we did on a winter night coming back from Salt Lake City, and we stopped there by Monida, the Chargers there coming into Montana, and went across the Big Hole, which is pretty remote country. So, 3 hour drive. And it's like, well, it was stormy, rainy, defrosters going full blast, slushy, snow. Is the computer range correct? Yes, it was fine. And once you do these runs, then you realize what you can do, and then you can kind of depend on, okay, I did that, and the conditions were worse than now. I've been here before, so just that learning. Of course, the slower you go, the better your mileage, but sometimes you want to get down the road. Aptera is a fun vehicle that's about to be produced. They're coming on. Look at that vehicle with the extended battery pack, get 1,000-mile range. Plus, there's solar cells embedded all over the fuselage or the top of the vehicle, and three-wheeler. But in southern sunny California, they're talking about 30 miles a day of charging just from the sun. So stuff like this is coming on. Energy density is increasing. Battery volume, costs are decreasing. So we're going the right direction. So let's see. I could get into a few more things. The chemistries maybe not so interesting to everybody, but LFP is coming on. We're using that in our stationary batteries, no cobalt use, and vehicles. Some of the vehicles are using LFP now, which is great. Battery breakthroughs, that's just, we're always going to be hounded by the next best thing that comes along. But then we need to hang always the issue. They bring it up in the lab, they come up with some amazing energy density, amazing efficiency, and then to take that from the lab to the commercial development to a plant that can produce that chemistry, that configuration, is years in the making. So it's getting better, but it's going to take time. So even though we hear about this 700-mile battery pack, it's it's a lot of talk, and a lot of times just investor talk to get folks look in that direction. So I guess maybe this time, McKenna, we should open it up to questions. I could dive into some other stuff, but do you want to do some questions first?
Sure, that sounds good, Dan. We'll start with a few that I saw in the chat, and if others have questions, feel free to add them as we go here. So, question from Seth at the Montana Facility Finance Authority. If their messaging on the work that they do is centered around efficiency and cost savings, I know you spoke at length at different parts during this presentation about the lower maintenance costs, the less frequent brake replacements. You don't have oil changes with an electric vehicle, and then you also gave that example of the 1,400-mile drive use case of fuel costs across the different segments. I saw that slide too, but could you point folks to a resource if they were trying to do a straight cost comparison between because you're dealing with your upfront capital investment of purchasing either an ICE vehicle or an electric, or maybe a hybrid too. I know we touched on that a little bit, but what would your advice be for someone who's just looking strictly at their estimated cost breakdown with the cost of electricity as it currently stands? What advice might you give folks?
Yeah, I wish I had a good referral, and maybe someone else that's watching would, as far as a website to do that. I know the Department of Energy website, and the Department of Energy has a listing of all the vehicles that are available and the size of the battery and such, which maybe is a place to start and look at what vehicle you're looking at. But as far as predicting just what your cost would be, that's kind of like when we talk to a solar customer and say, well, how many more modules do we need to run an electric vehicle? Well, if you look at the, miles per kilowatt hour, and you estimate how many how many miles a year you drive, you can do some back of the envelope math and saying, well, I need about this many kilowatt hours, and how many modules do I need to take care of that? So you wouldn't have to buy that electricity. But I don't really have a great source for one site that would do that, but I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah. One resource I recently learned about from the Rocky Mountain Institute is designed more so for homeowners and the whole home electrification. But I think it's called like the Green Power Upgrade Calculator. And I'm just starting to play with it. So TBD, I don't have a hot take assessment on its usefulness quite yet. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but that's a tool that MREA has recently started exploring on the residential side for home electrification, efficiency upgrades, solar, and integration of an electric vehicle.
Excellent.
And then I see Jesse from Yellowstone Teton Clean Cities also added a website from fueleconomy.gov. Jesse, do you want to briefly mention what that is?
Yeah, they have a bunch of different versions. I'm actually doing one right now. You could compare an EV versus a gas or diesel vehicle. It'll give you the comparisons. The link I showed, I think, will break down the costs to operate and own an EV. I think that's that one. But they have multiple tools there, and so you can figure out whatever you need to through fueleconomy.gov.
Good, good, good.
Thank you. Okay, looking at a couple other questions here. This is a question about your ranch, Dan, but there's some curiosity around the net metering policies for Ravalli and your solar systems that you have set up around the property. The question here comes from Mark. Do you have each array set up with a different meter? Are you non-exporting, or how have you designed your PV systems?
So I've worked with co-op here for a long time. We're kind of grandfathered in since we started early. So we are grid interactive. Of course, we use a lot of our energy during the day, but of course we can't. We run pumps all night long, as well during some times of the year. We have 11 different pumps running at the peak of things here in another month. So it's just a grid interactive system. We have worked with them to get larger than the 10 kilowatt maximum. So, but no, pretty normal. With we've worked a lot with the Valley Electric Co-op and have a good relationship with them. I know the newer systems with the co-op, with their wholesale feedback credit is not the best, where Northwestern at least lets us come back at retail. But we got in earlier than that. So we're grandfathered in. I think it's that breach of contract idea with the electric companies that we signed on early on, and I don't think they want to change things. That's my assessment of why they won't change with us.
Another question here about your Ford Lightning and your bidirectional charging. Is there any other battery storage at the ranch beyond the Ford Lightning? What is your setup there?
Yeah, it used to be. I used to have an LG battery, and I go through stuff to get the newest and the latest. But it's a good point that without a stationary battery, if I would drive away, then there's no power on the place. So really, to make an electric vehicle work well with a home, you need a combination of that stationary and your mobile. I went to a good talk by John Berner, who was one of the first inverter, worked with the first grid compatible inverters early on developer. And he had a talk titled EVs Will Change Everything. And he's in Southern California, where he's saying what they're doing with power rates down there, and they're increasing so much so that grid defection is really going to come on. Now we have electric vehicle that we can use as battery. Well, in sunny California, that would work, but you still have that issue of you need to have a stationary battery to make everything work, which is a really good point. In that are you going to power the vehicle or are you going to power the house? Well, if you're really going to depend on that battery, you need stationary as well. So we're not quite there yet, but that's the reality of. So at this point, no, I don't have another battery. I keep watching the developments and I keep watching the prices. So it's like, when do you put in? As soon as I put a new battery in, 10 months later, I go, oh my gosh, look at this new one that's come about. So it's fun to when do you add on and when do you hold for the next breakthrough?
I'm not sure if permitted to the question. Oh shit.
You want to go ahead, McKenna, or was there a question there?
Sure. Eric, if you do have a question, you could put it in the chat or unmute as we go here. But there's more curiosity on your bidirectional charging setup with your Ford and Sunrun system. Question here from Brant. Have you used your bidirectional charger for an actual power outage yet? And then he goes on further asking about the power transfer, if it's automatic or do you have to enable it after a power outage?
Yeah, great. Yeah, we've used it a couple times, and it is automatic, yet it's got a 2 to 5 minute delay, which is pretty funky. That you go that long before the inverter would check and see that the grid is just again the programming. So it's there, but it takes a while. And talking to the folks at Sunrun, it's like, yeah, anywhere between a minute and 5 minutes, and you're going, oh, really? So not quite, it's not as seamless as we know we can do, and we can see with other manufacturers' equipment. So yeah, the outages work well. It's automatic where, that's the advantage of all that extra gear is that it's sensing, waiting for an outage where that transfer switch will automatically transfer versus the option I talked about with a manual transfer switch where you'd have to go out and basically throw a switch to run those backup loads.
And then another question of what was the logic that went into your decision to go to 400 amp service?
The second electric vehicle kind of pushed us over the 200 amp limit. I didn't want to get into a place where we'd have nuisance breaker tripping. So, we're running heat pumps. I'm actually going to add another heat pump here for we have two rental places on the farm, and one of them is run by propane. So that's one of the goals is replace that. So I can see more coming on, especially if we do get into tractors, that we'd have. I have 4 different stations for the electric vehicles now because we move things around or you have a trailer on. So just wanted that. And the other thing, I think in the future, we're going to see, my guess is the utilities are going to increase the prices to change out all these transformers and get to a point where, that there may not be so much interest in it, especially from a utility that is not so much in the solar that, can drag their feet on a connection. So I wanted to do that early and be ready for the future as we try to get rid of every last drop of fossil fuels and depend more and more on electricity. Just kind of have us ready for the future.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Question here from Eric, and I know that Dan, you cover this in your 2-hour longer course, but we often get questions about weighing the environmental impacts of metal mining and the need for lithium ion batteries and then the recycling and life cycle considerations. So weighing the difference between a internal combustion engine environmental impact and electric vehicles. What's your take on that?
Yeah, my take is, these batteries, we're gonna run for quite a while. All these new vehicles coming on, when will they be ready to be? Will they no longer use in a vehicle? Well, we got a second life usage for the batteries, and that is running buildings and such, where they take a number of electric vehicle batteries and bring them together where they don't have the capacity to maybe give you the acceleration of the vehicle and the range like they did it when they were brand new. Team the older batteries together and still have a real viable battery bank. Use that as so first life in your vehicle, second life in a building type scenario, and then the third life, is, of course, is recycling. And I didn't get into the slides of recycling, but our recycling is just being developed right now. But 10 years from now, I think our lithium recycling is really going to be in good shape. What is it? The good quote, look at your used lithium battery as totally used as high grade ore. It's going to be much more efficient and use less energy to use those to recycle that battery. Nothing's been used up or consumed. It's still there. Or a tank of gas is the opposite. It's gone. It's in the atmosphere and such. So really, from a long-term physics and efficiency, I think we're gonna win because we're still going to be able to use those elements, and hopefully we'll reduce our mining in the long term. That's a long-term view, and a lot of folks, in society, a lot of times doesn't have that. But yeah, I think these batteries that we're using right now they're going to be with us for a while. So I think environmentally speaking, we're in pretty good, really pretty good shape there. And if we get away from cobalt more in the future, great. So we're figuring things out. So I think it's the right direction.
And even just thinking of an emissions standpoint for Montana, the Montana Department of Environmental Quality put in a recent report that the million metric tons CO2 equivalent for the transportation sector of Montana is 7.85 million metric tons, which is about 16% of our statewide emissions. And the average passenger vehicle, they didn't put this in their report, but just looking at national averages, average passenger vehicle is emitting about 4.6 metric tons of CO2 per year. So if we're thinking about, you don't have those emissions because you don't have a combustible fuel with EVs,
Right.
that you're already seeing the, at least from a carbon standpoint, the benefits from that point of view. All right.
Yeah, and the noxious gases as well. You know, I notice when I get in downtown Missoula, I smell the cars around me, where I didn't used to. I think I have another friend that says it really bothers him now because he's got two Rivians, and they just, you know, so the exhaust smells we used to take for granted, now they're a little more noticeable. And you read the studies about the school buses and the diesel emissions in the school buses, and you think, wow, this is stuff that we're avoiding. How do we put a cost to those, you know, externalities now that there's just a lot of benefits there that we haven't even really started talking about that much.
Yeah. Looking at our time here, we are wrapping up at the top of the hour. So thank you everybody for your excellent questions. And as far as follow-up resources for you to use, I know that Dan has mentioned Rewiring America as a useful go-to place. So Dan, if you have some comments on that.
Yeah, that just from an incentive standpoint, you know, I use that in the classes. There's so many folks don't know about all the incentives for weatherization to electric vehicles to heat pumps to solar. And that's a program with Rewiring America. I think it's .com or .org, if I'm not mistaken. Anyhow, you put in your income and your location, and that helps dial you in on the tax credits. So another resource that I'm sure a lot of you know about, but a lot of good help out there for people to figure out what they can do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you for taking the time to come and speak with us today and sharing some of your knowledge. If we did not get to your question, do please send us an email, info@montanarenewables.org. And we hope to see you next month. We're bringing in the U.S. Department of Energy Office of Community Engagement to talk about some of their off-the-shelf resources for funding and clean energy transition work at the local community level. So we hope to see you there. All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.